As as far as I understand, the jiva simply refers to a living entity, and atma means a soul, right?
So
So
different.
yeah, I mean they can be used interchangeably. Sometimes they're used as synonyms of each other.
Okay.
But our Gurudev liked to say jivatma. That was a
Mm.
I'm not sure how common that is in other discourses, which translates as living soul, right? Because you also see that word in that word jiva or jivan, you find it in other writings and poetry, as referring to something that is living or life, like just now what's coming in my head is one of our songs by Bhaktivinoda Thakur glorifying Krishna, that uh I can't remember the first line now, but there's one phrase, Jamuna Jivan, means that Krishna is the life of the Jamuna River. So it is simply like that, the life, living being, like that. And so, but then the word Atma does get a little tricky because, the Vedas are so broad, and sometimes Atma is referring to actually Paramatma or even Bhagavan in some cases, right? So because the Vedas they're deliberately broad and leaving room for everyone to feel included, right? And to feel, there's a broadness that's very inclusive. Um, and so the word Atma is sometimes used in different ways, right? Many verses are like that. You have to understand the context to know what is the deeper meaning of the verse, right? So yeah. There's one verse which our gurus like very much. You'll hear quoted in some of their talks. It's Nayam Atma Pravachanena Labhyo Na Medaya Na Bahuna Na Shutena Yame Vaisha Rinute Tena Labhyas Tasyaisya Atma Virinute Tanum Swam. And it's a very nice verse saying that it's describing how, we have a Pawan. Not sure who that is, but we'll take a chance and coming into our waiting room. It's a verse which is saying that, we cannot attain the Lord by the means of so much learning or study, right? In other words, through our brain power, our mental power, our physical power, we cannot achieve the Lord. But simply, if he chooses to give himself to someone, then they will have him. Like that. But the word that is used, if you look in that verse, it may be a little puzzling because in that verse, it doesn't say directly the Lord. It uses the word Atma, right? Nayam Atma Pravachanena Labhyo, that you cannot attain the Atma by all of these things. But logically, it's referring to the Lord, right? So, yeah, there's so much broadness in the use of language in the Vedic discourse, which, makes things a little problematic sometimes. Today I've been reflecting on, it's a very interesting topic, actually. There's this one issue which it's been getting more attention in these last however many years and more recent times, that if you look at how Western academia has presented Hinduism, they've presented a very narrow view, right? And specifically, for the most part, they're presenting the Advaita view, right? If you ask a Western scholar, what is Hinduism, they will tell you, the goal of everything is to merge into Brahman, right? They present a very Advaita view, oneness, right? But actually, there are two major lines of thought. Advaita and Dvaita also, right? Non-dual, but also dual, right? That yes, there is that school that says everything is one, but there's another school that says, and there's a very strong, staunch school that says no, it is a dualistic reality. There is God, and there's also his separated part of the jivatmas, right? The living souls. And and it's not only us who say that, we're not, we Hare Krishnas aren't just this modern cult, we're spouting this, but this is an ancient tradition in India, and Madhvacharya, he's one of the famous opponents of Advaitavad in India, and when you see depictions of him, many paintings of him, he was in this world, I don't know, around 1,000 years ago, something like that. I don't remember if he was before or after Ramanuja, but many of the depictions of him, he's shown with two fingers up, saying it's not one, it's two, right? This is, he was very, very strong in this, so the whole bhakti movement, it has a very, dignified and strong presence, throughout the history of India and Hinduism. But somehow or another, in the Western world, the idea of Hinduism is very limited, right? And there are different theories about that, and one thing I've heard is that, the early Hindus who went to India, they were Advaita people, like Vivekananda, right? Probably everyone here has heard of Vivekananda. Yeah, I guess he would be the first Hindu who went and, shared his faith in the West, and he gave this famous talk. It was it was like 1880 something, I think, at Chicago University. And there was, I'm sure many of you are familiar with that talk. It's very nice, actually. Our Gurudev, Śrīla Govinda Maharaj, appreciated he quoted some parts of that talk, and he started the talk saying, "Oh, my brothers and sisters of America," right? Which like just melted everyone's heart, because imagine an Indian man, in 19th century America, like looking so strange, looking like, foreigner isn't even strong enough, like an alien, you can say, right? But he started with this very like unifying statement, and everyone like dropped their guard and they were touched by that. And our Gurudev appreciated that. He said he showed the real spirit of the Vedic religion, right? So Vivekananda, I guess he was like the first pioneer of, the Vedic religion in the West. And so naturally, he had, a lot of influence in forming the West's idea of what Hinduism is, right? And then, of course, there's the fact that the Advaita conception is very appealing to the philosophical mind, right? It ties in with a lot of, Western philosophers' discussions. Whereas the Bhakti movement, even in India, sometimes in some circles, Bhakti has like a lower status, right? Because it's like, Bhakti people are all emotional and they don't have any strict renunciation, or, they're not strict they're not deep in their knowledge and all this, right? According to, general conventions, more respect is given to scholars and renunciates, and the idea of devotion can seem very kind of emotional, abstract, or for not very intelligent people, right? All these things, so Advaitavad kind of caught on more in Western circles because of that, with this emphasis on philosophy and scholarship. Of course, all of these, this is something that many don't realize, that all of these things are also included within bhakti, right? But they're not requirements, right? The real idea in the conception of devotion is that these qualities will follow behind bhakti, right? Knowledge, and there are many verses in Srimad Bhagavatam and other places, they state this, that knowledge and renunciation, they will follow, behind bhakti. That once bhakti has really awakened within someone, then all these other qualities, they will come. They're all servants of bhakti. And of course, we also try to include some element of scholarship and renunciation in our practice, but it's not the focus at all, because we know devotion, bhakti, is the real heart, the real center of our existence and our relationship with divinity, right? But yeah, and it's another interesting thing that Srila Sridhar Maharaj, I heard in one of his talks how he spoke about, this was actually one reason, this whole prejudice that is held against the bhakti movement and bhakti faith, this prejudice that people have, this is one reason why the Goswamis of Vrindavan chose to live such strict, extremely austere lives, right? They didn't need to do that, Actually, the real principle of devotion is yukta vairagya, right? And Rupa Goswami discusses this principle in his writings, right? Yukta vairagya is the conception of renunciation in devotion, right? Or properly adjusted renunciation. And what that means is that we actually use everything in the service of Krishna. Not that we shy away from material wealth or opulence, all these things, but rather we use everything in the service of Krishna. This is the real principle of devotion, of Krishna consciousness, of Vaishnavism. This is the principle of Vrindavan, right? They're only the only interest of the Brajabasis is to serve Krishna, to make Krishna happy. They have no prejudice against anything. Whatever serves Krishna, if wealth can serve Krishna, we will eagerly embrace wealth. If poverty serves Krishna, we'll embrace poverty. We don't have any prejudice against that, right? Our only principle is service of Krishna, right? So this is the real principle of devotion, and Rupa Goswami discusses this in his writings. But when it came to his own practice and the practice of the Goswamis, they demonstrated something else. They lived lives of extreme renunciation, living under a different tree every night, living under caves, living on dried out, stale chapatis and buttermilk here and there. One second, someone's here to join. Sorry, I have a meeting now. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Good night. Sorry. So they, extremely renounced from this world, right? And Srila Maharaj mentioned, that was one reason, because they had to give some dignity to this movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the whole principle of devotion in general, that it's not that we can't live austere lives, it's not that we're incapable of that. We're not saying yukta vairagya as an excuse to do whatever we want, right? And they had to demonstrate that, and this is another point, right, which can invite criticism from outsiders, that if you look at Krishna's example, it's not an example, right? Krishna, for us, right, Krishna is an enjoyer. That's actually his constitutional position, right? To enjoy. That's his nature, but it's not our nature, right? But, Krishna is, has so many girlfriends and so on and so forth, is appearing in a very ordinary, human-like way, right? And so people may criticize, oh, if we practitioners are loose in our behavior, then people can say, oh, yes, we understand your God is loose and you are also loose, right? So that actually gives us more reason to try to be more strict in our conduct, right? That we celebrate, Krishna's so-called apparent misbehavior, right? But we ourselves, we don't imitate that, right? Actually, Krishna, these are very fine points, right? Krishna is actually the master of all. And so if he is appearing as a thief, that's actually a very charming and ornamental thing. If a great wealthy person goes to rob something from his own household, that's a very charming thing, actually. There's no question of stealing there, right? So, this is all, everything's orchestrated in Krishna's divine pastimes to enhance the loving exchange with his devotees, right? These are all very fine principles of devotion. But we hold that above our heads, we worship that, we don't imitate that, right? And then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this is also one reason why he also lived a very austere life, right? He's Krishna himself, but in his form as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's coming to show the example of a devotee of Krishna, right? And so he actually lived a very, very strict life as a sannyasi, wouldn't even hear the name of a woman, it is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So yes, these are all, interesting points when it comes to how we spread Krishna consciousness at different times and different circumstances, right? In consideration, we do have to consider, what is the public view and all these things. So anyhow, it is a little sad, nowadays. And actually now it's kind of an issue because I'm really thinking about it now because we have our group with Japan and we have our weekly Bhagavad Gita meeting. And many of the members, they come from a yoga background. Some of them are yoga teachers even. So they've studied somewhat deeply some of the yoga philosophies. And yesterday, it was really brought home to me, like how they've been immersed in the Advaita philosophy, and so they're really struggling with some of these points of bhakti, right? But that's the pervading view of what Hinduism is. So so part of what we have to do sometimes is helping people to unlearn, right? And so anyway, I've been thinking about that. I'm thinking of maybe having some discussion on it, and maybe bringing in some of our Vaishnava scholars to clarify the actual the broader expression, broader forms of Hinduism that are there. Anyway, welcome. We had a few more join our group. Dana also tuned in, and Krishna and Johnny Didi. Welcome, everyone. And yeah, here in South India, and such a beautiful environment. And I mentioned at the beginning, we have this group here from Russia. One of our devotees, Indu Bala, she's very wonderful Vaishnava. She helped found the Russian mission actually from the early 1990s. And she's so steady. All these years she's been continuing with her preaching, and she brings groups to India almost every year. And then Jai Kumar Prabhu, he's a very unique Vaishnava. He's actually Tamil. He's from Chennai, but he went to school. He went to university. He's a doctor, an MD. He lived 14 years in Moscow. And he actually met our devotees in Russia. And so he speaks Russian. He speaks many different languages, about 4 different Indian languages, Russian, English. And so Yeah, so he met our devotees in Russia, so he's established this very close connection with them, and he helps them every year with these pilgrimages coming to India. So yeah, it's my good fortune. We've been meeting in the evenings and having some discussion, which has been a real blessing for myself. Krishna is always taking care of us. Well, does anyone else want to bring up any points for discussion today? Nazar, what are your thoughts? How long have you been connected with our community?
Hard to say. Depends. I know about Krishna consciousness long time ago.
Okay, long time. Okay. Nice.
But more connection is when war started. Many devotees started
I see.
gathering here.
I
So
see.
in some way, it's helped to make more connection, association.
And how do you stand? Are you still like kind of exploring? You're curious, or do you feel that your faith is here? Or somewhere in the middle?
I am. It's hard for me to understand what is faith. I just like this.
Your heart is attracted, your mind is attracted.
Yes, maybe it's correct words.
That's beautiful. And is there something about the teachings or the practice that attracts you especially, or it is in overall in general?
I think it mostly depends on the source. Who do you listen to? Because like if you get like 0 scriptures, it doesn't come to heart. Just text. The main is understanding, and it's come from real persons. Maybe some universal teaching from Swami Maharaj. It's more like a book. You can get much from book. But what is Sridhar Maharaj saying, Govinda Maharaj, it's more personal. Only if you have some personal association, you will get. I'm talking about myself.
Interesting.
If someone's got from them and I listen to them, then I also feel I understand something.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, hearing from a living agent, that is everything, actually. Yeah, I mean, for me, meeting Srila Govinda Maharaj and hearing from him, and not only hearing from him, but just being in his presence, and feeling his divine vibration, that was everything, Because as you said, when you read the books, you're reading the books, right? It is something very passive. But when you can see the spiritual vitality, that is enlivening someone, that is something completely different, right? And in the case of Srila Govinda Maharaj, we were able to witness how he was, in every movement and every word, everything was so perfect, and everything was always being done according to very high principles. I'm still, I'm still reflecting, meditating, and, realizing new things, about things that I observed in him. Sometimes in the very smallest movements, there was such depth, such profundity. So that was, and then also for me, seeing how some of the followers of Srila Govinda Maharaj, seeing their faith, that also helped me too, right? To see how others were serving him, right? And see the faith that they had in him. That also helped to raise my own faith. So, yeah, the connection with the living Vaishnava that is so precious to us.
We usually listen to Govinda Maharaj and Sridhar Maharaj with translation to Russian, but I recently listened some video without translation with subtitles, and it's completely another level of accepting his mood.
Wait, these are talks of Srila Prabhupada you're talking about, videos?
No, I mean Govinda Maharaj and Sridhar Maharaj.
Oh, okay, sorry, I didn't hear you clearly. Okay. Oh, before you were watching them with the Russian translation.
More listen.
Okay.
and it's just contents, because translator he gives like another mood. But if I see how he talks, how he smiles,
Okay.
his voice, it's completely another level.
That's an interesting point. It's an interesting point.
I can't imagine what was feeling people near him. It's amazing.
I like very much to watch the videos when he's sitting in his quarters in India. It's very relaxed, and it's different when he's giving like a public lecture. He's showing one mood and it's more formal. But those videos when he's just sitting, speaking very casually, then it's very powerful, because you see how he's Krishna conscious at every moment, right? It's not like with us, right? Oh, now we're gonna have a talk, right? And then we're doing or thinking about other things. But with Srila, and I can say I'm a witness of that, because I lived there for 10 years, and it is like that. He's always Krishna conscious. It's not like he switches on sometimes, but every moment was so profound. And he, and he was so open with the devotees. His doors would open at around 3 a.m., 3:30 a.m. And he was available, until 9 o'clock at night. He was available. He would take short rests, like short rest, maybe 10 a.m., a short rest, maybe around 3 or something, like maybe 20 minutes, half an hour rest, Otherwise, he was always available. He wasn't hiding anything. He didn't try and keep his privacy or private time. Oh, I need a break from everyone. No, no. He was just always giving himself, And and his like personal servitor group, they were trying to protect him sometimes, because they could see sometimes, he needs to rest, he needs some quiet. And so, sometimes they would tell people, oh, you have to go now, or oh, you can't come. And our Gurudev wasn't always happy about that. He would say, no, they can come. Or I saw him once, one servitor told someone to go, and our Gurudev was very unhappy. He said, no, she can stay. A few times I saw that. He was giving his whole energy for us, and living his every moment and Krishna consciousness. It's really an extraordinary thing, you know, like some of the most profound moments I had with Srila Govinda Maharaj, it was in the most, over the most ordinary things, you know, most ordinary things, you know, like, of course, he gave so many wonderful talks that I was able to be present for, but the moments that are really stuck with me, they were so insignificant, actually. You know, there was one moment, there was one time when he told me to switch on a light. And it was like one of the most profound moments. Like if I had to sit and say, like, what's the top 5? Maybe that was number 2 in my whole life, most profound moment. All he did was he told me that that's how it was like with him. Like every little interaction, there was so much behind it, you know. Like, you know, I could, you know, probably write 100 pages about that experience of him telling me to switch on the light, you know. Very extraordinary. I'll tell you what happened. I have told this story before, but it's one of my favorite stories. This was in Calcutta. Okay, Rasananda Prabhu, thank you for joining. Wish you all the best. But I had actually been sick for a few days. This was in Calcutta. And, you know, normally every morning we would all go to see our Gurudev, and sometimes in the evening or afternoon also. But I think I had a high fever. I was in my bed for 3 days. And then finally I was better and I was going to his room. I went maybe around 9 o'clock in the morning just to give respects because I felt so bad. I hadn't seen him for several days. And so I thought I should just go and, you know, check in. And of course, I wanted to see him also, have his darshan. And so I went in, but you know, I'm feeling very awkward because I'm normally there every day and I haven't been there for 3 days. So I'm feeling very awkward. Like, should I say something? Should I explain? Oh, I've been sick, or please excuse me, or, you know, or I was feeling awkward, you know, what am I going to do? What should I say? And so I went in, and then there was this very magical moment. I think he was sitting at his desk reading something, and he just glanced up at me, and he said, "Give light," you know. And now for those of, I think some of you may have heard about this. This was like an ongoing drama with Srila Govinda Maharaj and his entourage. He would tease the devotees because, you know, if you've been to India, you'll see that they have this system of making, like in one room, there will be one board, all the switches are on there for all the lights, all the fans, everything, the plugs, you know, and it could be a big room with 4 different fans and 10 different lights and 3 different plugs, and it's all on this one board, right? And so often, especially with the Westerners, our Gurudev would, maybe only with the Westerners, our Gurudev would ask them to switch on a light or switch on a fan. And you know, very often they'd get it wrong because it's very difficult to memorize which switch is which, you know. And so it became like this kind of like funny drama, you know, and then sometimes Srila Govinda Maharaj, he would really like tease them and like for example, he told one devotee, if you cannot even turn on a light switch, then you may as well leave Krishna consciousness, you know. Or how many Americans does it take to turn on a light, you know? And there was one devotee, she got the switch wrong once and he sent her out of his room, and you know, he was like really playing with everyone. And so he, and the thing is, like, I wasn't part of that circle. Like it was only like the close servitor group who would be asked to do that, right? And you know, I wasn't part of that. I was in an outer circle. I was in the Das Anu Das section, servant of the servant, right? So I wasn't part of that inner group. He never asked me, before or after, never asked me. So I went and I was so surprised. But it was also very sweet because, you know, I was feeling so awkward. And he just made me feel at home. Like nothing had happened. I'm part of the family. Everything's been going on as usual. Oh, turn on the light switch, you know, pass me a glass of water. Like everything was normal and fine. And, you know, I was part of it, you know. So you know, I also felt this like inclusiveness and love and affection, you know, and I'm also shocked. And then actually Madhusudana Maharaj was sitting there. He was Mahananda at the time. And there were just a few devotees there. And he immediately got a little anxious because he was worried I would get in trouble, you know, if I got the switch wrong. And so and Gurudev didn't even say which light. There's maybe 10 different lights, you know, in the room. And Gurudev didn't say which light also. So Madhusudana Maharaj like was worried for me. And he said, oh, Gurudev, which light? Which light? No, but Gurudev just ignored him and he went back to reading. And then there was this very mystical moment. Like I just knew which switch. I just somehow knew which switch. And so I was giving Dandava, I stood up and I just went for the switch and our Gurudev like didn't even blink, you know, like everything was normal. Like this happens every day, you know, and I felt like so at home and so you know, loved, you know, and included. And it was like such a tiny thing, just turn on the light switch, but there was all this, you know, profundity that was behind it. You know? And so I went out, you know, feeling, you know, so happy and so at home and very, very, very mystical. Very, very mystical, Srila Govinda Maharaj. Like really, he could just give you a particular look. And there was so much that was behind that, you know, there was so much. Another moment I had with him that was very, very special. I used to go on collection, you know, in Calcutta. It was like a tradition that sometimes the Western devotees would go out and go to different businesses throughout the city and ask for donations, right? And Ashram Maharaj, he had a book. I don't know if any of you have seen that. Maybe Krishna and Rani saw that. And he would keep like this detailed record of the date and the place and how much they gave. So it was this ongoing tradition, right? And actually I was very shy to do that, but one young devotee, she convinced me, and we went out for, I don't know, maybe 1 year, maybe it was 6 months, I don't remember. And we had this tradition that myself and this other girl, we used to write some personal message, you know, on the we would collect some money. It wasn't usually very much, you know, but we put it in an envelope. We'd go out in the morning and come back at night. And so we had this tradition at the end of the day, whatever little money we had, we'd put it in an envelope and we'd write some personal message on there. I don't even really remember what we would write. Like I remember once we wrote something like, "We are just pretenders, Gurudev," you know, and it would be like kind of a paragraph of our emotions or something like that, you know. And so it was like this tradition. Then every night, maybe 7 or 8 o'clock, we'd come in and it was like a sweet kind of intimate time with Gurudev. Just a few devotees would be around. Usually Goswami Maharaj was there and maybe a few others. And so it was like a tradition, the two, but we're like these two kids, you know, we're like maybe 22 years old, or she's a little younger than me, a year or two younger. And so it was like this tradition every night. And then Gurudev would look at the message and maybe he would read it sometimes. And so this went on for some months, right? And then at a certain point, the devotee I used to go with, I think she had to go back to America or something, or she had to leave for her visa. Something happened, and I decided to continue going, right? And for some period, and someone else came with me. And so then it was the first day, right? I was going, um, like on my own, but one person was with me, but without my usual partner, right? Who's like more strong and, a little more confident. And so it was my first time. And then so it's the end of the day, we've collected some rupees, and I put it in the envelope, and then I'm like looking like, oh, what should I write? What should I write? And I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? I don't want to write anything, you know? I thought, because I just want to make an offering to Gurudev. I just want to be like an instrument. I want to make a selfless offering. I don't want to put me into the offering. That was my feeling. So I thought, I'm just like a humble instrument. I'm just collecting these donations and I'm giving them to Gurudev. I don't need to be in the middle of this, right? This is what I was thinking. And so I just put the rupees in the envelope and I wrote the amounts in the corner, how many rupees it was. I didn't put my name or anything, any message. And so then I went down and I presented the envelope to Gurudev, and Gurudev looked at it and he was so happy. And so he turned and looked at me, and I was sitting on the side, and he gave me, like, it was the biggest smile I'd ever had from him. Like, it was very extraordinary. Because, Srila Govinda Maharaj, he could be a little, what can I say, like you couldn't always read him, he could say one thing but mean something else. He could give a smile, but he means something else. There was some, there were many different layers to his words and his expressions, and there was just so much depth to him. But that moment when he smiled at me, it was like he was showing me his heart. It was like this very raw sharing, right? Raw transmission. Like there was no filter, there was no double meaning. It was just like pure happiness, a huge, huge smile, an open heart. And so he's like looking at this blank envelope, there's nothing on it. And he looks at me and just gives me this $1 billion smile. And then we had this beautiful moment, like, and I know what he's thinking, like he's appreciating, oh, you're really making this a selfless offering, and like it was like, I felt like he was saying, oh, now you've grown up, now you've come to another level, you've matured, but it was so funny because, and this made it more special, right? No one else in the room knew what was going on. Right, they're all thinking, because it's the usual evening tradition, right? Coming with an envelope, there's a special message. So everyone in the room's wondering, oh, what did she write on the message? Srila Govinda Maharaj is so happy. But they don't know the secret that I didn't write anything. That was his power, in these very ordinary exchanges, there was so much, so much depth, so much feeling, and you really felt like he was this omniscient presence, like just even being in the same building with him, like you felt like he's seeing everything, you really felt that. And often these like little things would happen where you felt some confirmation, just little subtle things that he might say or do or expression, but it was like a confirmation. Oh, he's really seeing and watching everything, devotees have told stories how they had some dream with him, and then the next day he refers to that dream, and all these like little mystical things would happen. I had like just one little thing that comes to mind is once I was able, through a whole series of events, I got to be in Govardhan at the same time as Srila Gurudeva. It was his last visit. It was February 2008. He went to Vrindavan and Govardhan. After his last world tour, he went to Malaysia, Mauritius, and one other place, which I can't remember right now. And then he visited Vrindavan and Govardhan. And I was given the service of washing his clothes at that time, which usually I didn't get. Usually there was a whole mafia around who gets to wash Srila Govinda Maharaj's clothes. Like, I'm not kidding. There would be cat fights over it. Devotees would fight over that. But somehow or other, I guess there were less devotees around, or I don't know what it was, but I was given that service to wash his clothes, and I remember distinctly I was washing them in Divya Shakti's bathroom. I don't remember why, but it's a ground floor room in the building in Govardhan where he would stay, the new building. And every day I'm washing his clothes in that bathroom. And then there was one day, Srila Govinda Maharaj, his room, his quarters were on the top floor of that building. But this is 2008, right? At that time, he's showing poor health. So every time he would go up and down stairs in that last, I don't know, maybe last 2-3 years, it was a big, it was a big thing. He would need to be carried. I don't know how long that was going on, but in that last period, he was like that, and so he had to be carried up and down the stairs. And so it was, it was a trip, bringing him down to go to the temple and then going back up. And then one day when he came down, they just brought him down the stairs, and then he suddenly said, "Oh, I need the bathroom," right? He just came. He could have easily said it, before he left, but somehow, as soon as he got to the bottom of the stairs, he said, "Oh, I need the bathroom." And so they took him into the nearest bathroom, which happened to be the exact bathroom where I was washing his clothes. And I felt like, he was reciprocating. Like, oh, there's so many rooms in that building. There's like 20 rooms in that building. And somehow, he, through this series of events, he chose to use that. And so I felt, he's reciprocating with me. Of course, to some people, I may sound crazy. We all sound crazy, But he made us feel like that, I can say, that he was really reciprocating with us, that he could really feel and see all of our offerings and everything that we were doing. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Param Sra Pashyanti Suraya Diviva Chakshora Tatam. This is the principal mantra, or one of the very first mantras of the Rig Veda. I think it's described as the principal Veda sometimes, and it's saying how the eye of Vishnu is always above, right? This is the vision, and particularly this is chanted, we hear at the beginning of some new undertaking by Brahmins. The idea is that we're beginning something with the vision that the Lord is above our head. He's seeing everything, right? And if we're living in that vision, we can't do anything wrong, right? We always have this divine surveillance going on, right? that the Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Param Sarapashan, that the great souls, the suras, right? The suras are the opposite of the asuras, the demonic, the great souls. They're always seeing that the lotus feet of Vishnu are high above the sky, like an eye that is seeing everything that is going on. Right? And we had that type of feeling in the presence of Srila Govinda Maharaj. And he actually mentioned once, now I remember Madhusudan Maharaj said that once he actually shared, like privately, and few devotees were there, he said that when he looked at someone, he could see like a movie unfolding. He could see everything, their past, their present, their future. But he said, actually it is not a happy thing, and he doesn't want to see it sometimes, but it is appearing, he had this type of mystical ability, and we really felt that, like sometimes when he looked at you, it felt like an X-ray, like penetrating to your core. I remember there was one period when I first went to live in India, I felt like I was kind of under examination. A few times I caught him like staring, like really staring, and I really felt like I was under examination, and then there was a time when the mood shifted. I felt, oh, now he's accepted me. Like he was considering like, where does she stand? What's her real intention? What's her potential and why is she here, really, like there was some period of assessment. And then at a certain moment, there was a shift, and he decided, I'm okay, and especially after he gave me saffron, then it really changed a lot, then he really treated me like, oh, now you're really, part of the family, now you've like signed the dotted line, you've signed your soul away. Yeah. Yeah, one of my good friends was a Kinchan Maharaj. He was a sannyasi. He took sannyas from Srila Govinda Maharaj. And he told me, that he noticed that too. After he took sannyas, their relationship changed completely. Srila Govinda Maharaj was so affectionate. Like, now you've really committed yourself, now you've burned the bridge, right? We've heard that expression, burn your bridge. This is a military tactic. You land on some new territory, you burn the bridge behind you, burn your boat, burn your ship. There's no going back, right? Only forward, only ahead. There's no other way, So he really appreciated that so much, right? Well, somehow we got onto this topic today by the inspiration of Nazar. And we had a few others join. Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu is with us. Jagannath Priya joined us. And Shreya also joined us. Dandavad. And Gangalila's still with us. She told us she had to sign out, but she made it. And Tungarasa shared this verse. Oh, thank you very much in our chat here. Very beautiful verse. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Param Sarapashanti Suraya Diviva Chakshuratatam. The divine feet of our holy Lord are like the sun above our heads. His holy feet are like the vigilant eye of a grand guardian, hanging over our heads like the sun, and we are living beneath the glance of that vigilant eye. Beautiful. All right. Well, maybe we'll close there for today. So happy to connect with all of you. By the Lord's grace, I somehow or other always manage to remain in good association, whether physically or virtually. So I'm blessed by all of you, and so happy to be able to remember Srila Govinda Maharaj. These are just sentimental stories, right? But they mean something, right? And there are many devotees, they just had you know, Srila Govinda Maharaj had thousands of disciples around the world, and, you know, many of them, they only got to meet with him once or twice, right? Or couldn't even speak the same language, but they remember that, right? The way he looked at them, the way he spoke one or two words to them, right? Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu, you're also Srila Govinda Maharaj's disciple, right?
No, I'm not.
Okay, you
In
didn't
some
meet
sense,
him.
of course, I am trying to be his
Mm.
disciple. I would love to be his disciples, to be accepted by him.
Oh, I'm sure
But,
you are.
yeah.
So, but so many had that experience, you know, just one or two. I've heard devotees tell me their stories, you know, they'll carry that their whole life, you know. We may sound mad to outsiders, but this is the feeling that he gave us, you know. He made us mad, you could say. If that's madness, then that is a good thing. All right, well, I'll close there for today. Wish you all a joyful, inspired week ahead, and look forward to next time. Panchakalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Deva Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Shri Rupanuga Guruvarga Ki Jai. All the assembled devotees, sincere seekers Ki Jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Jai Gaur Premanand. Haribo. See you all next time.